My name is Tom Rivers, and I lost my place at the table before the garlic bread even cooled. You can measure the unraveling of a family not in years, but in glances not returned. In silence passed across a dining table like a bowl of salt no one asked for. That night, the evening sun hung low over the houses, dull gold burning behind the blinds. I had made linguine, homemade, with the garlic oil Jenny liked, the kind that clings to your lips, the kind that reminded her, once, of our honeymoon. She didn't mention it. She hadn't mentioned much in months. I set the table while she chopped herbs. That used to be our ritual. Now it was just choreography. She didn't look at me, didn't say anything when I folded the napkins into triangles the way her mother used to. Her son Justin was already at the table, chin down, thumbs dancing over his phone like he was trying to summon a different reality. He didn't look up when I passed him the bread. He never did. I plated the food. 3 dishes evenly spaced. Jenny's wine, white, dry, never sweet. Justin's water, no ice, always room temp. These were things I remembered. These were things no one asked for anymore, but I did them anyway. That was my role. To anticipate, to provide, to be invisible but useful. Like plumbing. We ate in near silence. Forks scraping plates. The dull hum of the fridge. A distant dog barking. I cleared my throat once, maybe twice, hoping someone would fill the space. They didn't. Justin looked up, finally. Not at me, through me. And with a smirk that twisted something deep in my stomach, he said, "We're expanding the business. But you, Tom, go grab some coffee." He laughed. Not a real laugh. The kind people make when they're auditioning for cruelty. Jenny's eyes widened just a touch. Not from shock, from amusement. She brought a napkin to her mouth like she was stifling a cough. But I saw the truth. She was smiling. Small. Crooked. Pleased. I didn't leave. I didn't even blink. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and pressed the number I kept hidden under a fake contact. Winston Delivery. The only name Justin ever saw attached to the orders. The number belonged to Mr. Shin, our Korean supplier. The one I had flown to Seoul to meet. The one who trusted me because I came to his daughter's wedding. I hit speaker. The call rang once. "Hello, Mr. Rivers," came the voice, strained and formal. "We received the documents. This negotiation is terminated. We will no longer work with your company." Justin stared. "Wait, what?" I turned to him, slow. "You used my name to open that door, so I closed it." No one spoke after that. Jenny looked down. Justin stabbed at his pasta like it had insulted him personally. I finished my meal. Every bite tasted like ash. Later, I did the dishes alone. No one offered. No one thanked me. I dried my hands on the towel Jenny kept over the oven handle, the one I'd replaced twice when it got too worn. She never noticed. That night I drove. No destination. Just asphalt and the low hum of tires. The city lights thinned as I headed north, past subdivisions and gas stations, out toward the old roads where the stars were still visible. I pulled off near a shuttered motel. The neon sign flickered. Vacancy. The kind of place where stories end or begin. I parked but didn't go inside. Just stared through the windshield at the empty lot, listening to my own breath. I thought about the things I'd built. Not companies. Not accounts. People. Family. Or so I told myself. When Justin dropped out of college, I paid for his HVAC courses. He didn't ask me. He asked Jenny. She asked me. I said yes. No hesitation. When his first car broke down, I found him a used Tacoma. Paid in cash. When he moved back home, I offered to paint his room. He said nothing. Just dropped his boxes in the hallway and went out with friends. Chuck, his biological father, was a ghost. A name on late Christmas cards. A man who signed love, Dad, like a stranger trying to get into a party he hadn't been invited to. Once, when Justin was 15, Chuck missed his birthday. Again. I found him in his room, curled up, eyes red but unspilled. I knocked, waited. When the door opened, I stepped inside, arms wide. Justin let me hold him. For 10 seconds. Then he pulled away. "Thanks," he mumbled. Then he closed the door. Jenny told me not to take it personally. He's just not used to you. You knew this would be hard. I did know. And still I stayed. I worked long hours. Paid off the house. Upgraded the HVAC system. Bought solar panels even though no one asked. I thought, maybe if I make this place better, warmer, he'll feel safe here. Maybe she'll see I belong. Maybe one day, I'll hear it, Dad. Or at least, thank you. But the word never came. Instead, Justin brought home Chuck's business plan. A joke, really. A half-finished pitch for a logistics app with no infrastructure. Justin thought it was genius. Jenny beamed. They're really bonding, she said. They? I asked. Chuck and Justin. Sweet. He's never had this before. I looked at her then, really looked, and something inside me began to wither. She was proud. Not of me. Of them. Of the man who mailed his love and the boy who had stopped seeing me years ago. I said nothing. Instead, I made dinner, set the table, cleaned the gutters, paid the bills. I was the scaffolding, the floor beneath their feet, the ghost with a checkbook. And now I was a joke at the table, a punchline served with linguine. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the garage, lights off, the quiet ticking of the water heater the only sound. I thought of all the little things, the dinners I paid for and never ate, the vacations I booked but was left out of in photos, the birthday where they cropped me out of the group picture. It's just for friends, Tom. Don't be weird. I remembered the time Justin broke a window playing backyard baseball. I fixed it before Jenny got home. He never said a word, just walked past me, glass crunching under his sneakers. I remember Jenny's sister, how she once told me at Thanksgiving. You've done more for that boy than his real dad ever did. You know that, right? I nodded, smiled, but her words didn't feel like praise. They felt like a reminder. You're not his real dad. You're just the man who stayed. And staying, it turned out, wasn't enough. That's the thing no one tells you when you marry a woman with a son old enough to remember a different man. You're not a second father. You're a substitute teacher who overstayed the assignment. No matter how long you're there, the seat still belongs to someone else. The next morning, I found a sticky note on the fridge. Jenny's handwriting. Out with Justin. Meeting new supplier. Don't wait up. They didn't ask me to come. They didn't need me to. They had Chuck. That afternoon, I stood in the hallway looking at the family photos lining the wall. Not one of them had me in it. Not the beach trip. Not Christmas 2 years ago. Not Justin's graduation. I was always behind the camera. Always holding the ladder. Always forgotten. I walked into the office I built for Justin when he said he wanted to run things. He'd turned it into a monument to Chuck. Pictures. Whiteboards with scribbled notes I hadn't written. Passwords he had changed. Vendor lists copied from my files and renamed like they were his. I sat in the chair I bought. Opened the drawer. Found a business plan with Chuck's name at the top. Founder Charles Miller. No mention of me. I laughed. Once. Quietly. Then I got up, walked into the kitchen, and poured myself a cup of cold coffee. Drank it black. That was the night I stopped being the man who fixed things. That was the night I started listening to what the silence had been telling me all along. 3 days after the dinner, I opened my email and stopped breathing. The subject line was innocuous. Updated documents, final sign-off. Just another business file. That's how they wanted it to look. Like protocol. But the moment I clicked, I saw what I wasn't meant to see. The attachments told the whole story. Office lease agreement. Commercial equipment orders. Supply chain contracts. All in motion. All tied to my credentials. My credit. My name. My name. But the sender, Lisa, one of the new interns, had forwarded me the thread. She didn't know any better. She thought I was still part of it. Still the man behind the curtain. The message Jenny had written was at the bottom of the email chain. Like a dirty secret left in the open. Officially, the company founder is Chuck Miller. Tom isn't involved. Don't include his name on any outgoing correspondence. Keep it internal only. It wasn't a mistake. It was erasure. A decision. A boundary. I wasn't family. I wasn't a partner. I wasn't even the ghost in the spreadsheet anymore. I was the man who built the ship but wasn't allowed aboard. I didn't yell. I didn't call. I didn't confront Jenny or Justin. What would be the point? They'd made their choice. Now I would make mine. They were flying to Portland that weekend, Jenny and Justin, to meet with potential vendors. 2 days, maybe 3. Jenny texted me Friday morning. Flights in an hour. Can you feed Lucky while we're gone? Tichex. Smiley face. No mention of the documents. No explanation. Just a casual directive. Like I was the help. Like the man who funded their future could still be counted on to refill the dog bowl. I stared at the message for a long time. I typed, "Sure," then deleted it. I let the thread go cold. That night, I walked into the office. The one Justin called HQ. I turned on the lamp, sat down, pulled open the drawer and removed every folder, every spare copy of contracts I'd signed. Bank info, tax IDs, invoices, all mine. None of it legally theirs. Just borrowed authority. I logged into the business account, changed the passwords, transferred the funds, what was left, to a private escrow I controlled, canceled the pending orders, notified the lease manager that I was withdrawing my application. The equipment vendor had already shipped half the units, but I called before delivery. Told them the buyer no longer had permission to receive. Told them the name Chuck Miller meant nothing to the account. I didn't need to raise my voice. I just needed to speak clearly. At the end, I left one folder on the desk. Red, labeled in thick black pen. Closed. Inside were the confirmations. Every cancellation. Every account closure. Every receipt of final payment. No dramatics. No note. No last-minute confession. Just the facts. Then I walked through the house, turning off lights one room at a time. The way I used to when Justin was little and afraid of the dark. Back when I believed, foolishly, that if I kept the lights warm, he'd one day see me as home. I packed a bag. Just a small one. Jeans. Toothbrush. Spare keys. Left the rest. By morning I was gone. I didn't slam the door. Didn't leave the TV on in protest. I just disappeared. Like smoke from a fire no one remembered lighting. Jenny called at 9:06 a.m. I let it ring. She called again at 9:17. Then again at 9:32. A text followed. "Tom, something's wrong. Call me." I turned the phone off. For the next 2 days, I stayed in a motel on the edge of nowhere. A real dump. Yellow curtains stained with time. Carpet that smelled like mildew and forgotten arguments. But it was quiet, and the quiet felt clean. Like stepping into a world that didn't expect me to give and give and give. On Sunday, I powered the phone back on. 12 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and 1 message from Justin that read, "What the hell did you do?" I didn't respond. Let them stew in the taste of a meal cooked without me. I returned Monday morning, parked on the curb, sat in the car for 10 minutes before walking in. The office was stripped. Desks empty. Laptops gone. Only the red folder remained. Jenny was standing in the hallway, her arms crossed, face pale. She looked like a woman who had just realized the walls weren't holding themselves up. "Where is everything?" she asked. "Gone," I said. Justin barreled out of the back room, his phone clutched in one hand, his eyes wild. "This is illegal," he shouted. "You can't do this. You shut it all down." I nodded. "Yes. You're not even part of the company." "No," I said. "I was the company, and now I'm not." Jenny's voice was smaller than his. Tight. "You didn't even tell me." I looked at her, and that was when it hit me, the depth of the betrayal. Not the business. Not the money. Her. The woman I'd shared 10 years with. Who knew what I had sacrificed. Who watched me dig the foundation with bare hands and still pretended it wasn't mine. "You already said everything," I said. "You just didn't say it out loud." Justin paced like a trapped animal. I could see it behind his eyes, not anger. Panic. The realization that the safety net was gone. That the lines he'd crossed had consequences. He pointed a shaking hand at the desk. You can't just walk away. You ruined everything. No, I said. I ended it. You've been nothing but bitter since Chuck came back into the picture. Admit it. I laughed once. Cold. Short. Chuck didn't build any of this. Chuck sent Christmas cards with the wrong year on them. Chuck didn't learn your birthday until you were 19. He flinched. Jenny didn't defend him. You needed a name, I said. So you took his. You needed money, so you used mine. And when it came time to give credit, you left me out. That's not family. That's a con. Jenny finally spoke again. You could have just talked to me. I looked her in the eye. I did. For years. You just stopped listening. She opened her mouth, closed it, and I walked past her, down the hall and out the door. That was the last time I stepped into that office. That night, I moved into a one-bedroom on the edge of downtown. Not much. Concrete walls. Stained blinds. But the locks worked, and the silence was mine. No one called that night. The next morning, my phone buzzed. One message from Jenny. Can we talk? I deleted it. An hour later, one from Justin. You destroyed everything. I sat at the table in my new place. Sipped coffee I brewed myself. Listened to the hum of the city. No footsteps above me. No muffled conversations behind closed doors. No need to earn a place in a house that never made space for me. I thought about the years I gave. The loans. The dinners. The holidays I spent alone in the kitchen while they laughed in the living room. The birthdays I wasn't included in. The vacations where I was the photographer, never the subject. They had used my silence as permission, so I gave them something else. Absence. People think betrayal comes with shouting, with slammed doors, with broken plates and police reports. But it doesn't. Sometimes betrayal is a quiet thing. A line in an email. A name removed from a document. Sometimes it's the people who say thank you the least who take the most. And sometimes the only way to be heard is to leave. Let them explain to the vendors why the deals fell through. Let Chuck try to reopen those doors. Let Jenny remember how easy it was to say nothing. To let silence do the dirty work. I was done. Done pretending I had a seat at their table. Done being the scaffolding for a house that never saw me as its own. Done apologizing for being the only adult in a room full of borrowed names and inherited debt. For the first time in years, I didn't feel hollow. I felt clean, free, and deeply, finally, unseen by choice. It started with the voicemail. I hadn't checked them in a week. Didn't see the point. But Monday morning, between coffee and unpacking the last of my books, I tapped the red icon, almost on accident. One new message. Justin's voice. I don't know what you think this is, but we have rights. You can't just cancel everything. There are legal consequences. This was a partnership. You can't just vanish and screw us. I deleted it before it finished. Rights. That word sat in my chest like a nail, like a joke told too often. He had said I had no rights, no voice in the business, no name on the family, no claim on the boy I raised. And now, when the credit dried up, the contracts died, and the deals collapsed, suddenly I mattered again. Only as a bank, a signature, a shield. I stood at the window, watched the rain trace down the glass. That voicemail was proof of what I already knew. They hadn't expected me to leave. They thought I'd grumble, bark a little, then fold. They had counted on me still playing the role. The quiet man with the open wallet. They forgot I was the architect. The next day, Jenny showed up at my apartment. She didn't call first. Just stood there in the hallway, eyes wide, clutching a takeout bag like it could soften the blow. I opened the door. Said nothing. I brought lunch, she said, lifting the bag like a peace treaty. I stepped aside. She walked in slow, taking in the furniture I'd brought from the house. Just 2 chairs. A table. A mattress still in plastic. Spartan. Honest. You don't have to do this, she said, sitting. You don't have to punish him. I sat across from her. He punished himself. You know he's young. He says things he doesn't mean. He meant every word. Her eyes flicked to the corner. The folder I'd left on the counter, bank papers, supplier correspondence, the full autopsy. I didn't know he'd sent that email, she said, quieter now. The one removing your name. I didn't answer. Chuck offered to help, she added. He says he'll try to get another supplier. I looked her dead in the eyes. Chuck can't even keep his phone bill paid. She flinched. It's not about Chuck. It's about Justin. He's lost. He doesn't understand what he's done. He understands perfectly, I said. He understood when he laughed at me in my own kitchen, when he took my money and put someone else's name on the company, when he told me to get coffee. She tried to speak. I raised a hand. I was good enough to pay for his courses, good enough to fix his car, good enough to make the house warm, but not good enough to be listed as anything but a liability. Her voice broke. He's scared, Tom. So was I. She looked up. I was scared every time I signed a check with no thanks. Scared every time I stayed in a room where I wasn't wanted. Scared that if I ever stopped carrying them, they'd drop me like a burnt match. She didn't respond, just sat there, chewing the inside of her cheek. I leaned forward. I don't need rights in your house. I don't need a title. But I won't be used. She didn't stay for lunch. Left the bag on the table. Said she'd call. She didn't. That week, the messages came in waves. The supplier in Seoul messaged me directly. Mr. Shin. Formal but kind. We regret ending our cooperation. Your integrity was always appreciated. I thanked him, told him I understood, that my name no longer held weight in that venture. Later that day, I received a call from a contractor I'd brought in last quarter. He asked if the rumors were true, that I'd left, that the company was folding. I told him I couldn't speak to internal affairs. He laughed. Hell of a way to go out, Tom. Wish I'd seen it coming. So did I. That night, I sat in bed, reading the old ledger I used to keep. A spiral notebook with Justin's first expenses. His trade course tuition. The $1,200 for a flight he said he needed for a conference. The $500 I gave Jenny for his tools. The receipts I never filed. The IOUs never written. I flipped the last page. Blank. And for the first time in over a decade, I didn't add anything. The next blow came Thursday. Justin showed up at the apartment. Not to apologize. To rage. I opened the door and he pushed past me without asking. He paced the room like he owned it. You don't get to disappear, he barked. You can't just cut everything off and act like you were never part of this. I stayed standing. I was never part of it, I said. You made sure of that. You're overreacting. We were going to include you. Eventually. It was a misunderstanding. I laughed once. You sent an email, Justin. You removed my name. You took my money and built a castle with someone else's flag on the door. He stopped pacing. Chuck's my dad. Chuck's a signature on a Hallmark card. I was the one who stayed. He didn't reply. I walked to the window. Rain again. Always rain. You can have your business, I said. Your name. Your father. But not my resources. Not my time. Not my name. He sank into the one chair like his legs gave out. I don't know how to fix this. I didn't answer. After a moment, he stood. Walked to the door. Before he left, he said quietly, You were more of a dad than Chuck ever was. I didn't flinch. But not enough to be one when it counted. He left. The next day, the landlord called. Apparently, Jenny had tried to reach me. Said it was urgent. Left her number. I didn't call. By the weekend, the emails turned desperate. One from Jenny. We're going to lose the warehouse space. They're demanding payment. Chuck can't cover it. One from Justin. Just talk to me, please. We didn't think you'd actually leave. One from a shared account I hadn't seen in months. You're still listed as the emergency contact for Justin's equipment rental. Please update. I didn't reply to any of them. I went for a walk instead. Down to the river, where the city meets its edge. Where no one knows your name. Where you can be a ghost without apology. I sat on a bench, watched the current drag leaves past the stone embankment. I thought about legacy. About all the ways we tell ourselves we're building something. Family, a future, a name. But a name doesn't mean anything if no one speaks it with truth. That night I burned the ledger, took it outside, lit a match, watched every unpaid debt, every unspoken thank you, curl into smoke and vanish. No rage, no drama, just fire. Jenny came again Sunday night. She knocked once, then again. I didn't answer. Through the door, she said, "We never meant to hurt you." I leaned my head back against the wall, closed my eyes. "You never meant to love me either." I let her stand there. Eventually, the footsteps faded. That was the last I heard from her for a while. I spent the next week clearing out the last remnants. Closed a joint savings account. Transferred the final utilities. Notified the tax office of my withdrawal from the company. Checked the last box. Done. Free. And then, days later, a letter arrived. From Justin. No return address. Just my name written in crooked block letters. Inside, a single page. "You did everything for us. I didn't see it. Now I do. I'm sorry." I read it once. Then again. My hands didn't shake. My eyes didn't water. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer beside my bed. Not out of sentiment. Out of memory. A reminder. Sometimes remorse comes too late. Sometimes silence has already done its work. I lay back. Closed my eyes. Let the world turn without me. No more dinners. No more half-earned love. No more houses that weren't mine. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. And in that quiet, I felt the weight finally shift. Not off my shoulders. Out of my chest. Because it had never been love that kept me there. It was the hope of being loved back. And that hope had died. Quietly. Just like I did the night they laughed at me over garlic bread. The morning after I read Justin's letter, I didn't move for hours. It sat on the table like a relic. His handwriting sharp, crooked, pressed hard into the paper. I could see where the pen had almost broken through, like the words had resisted being written. "You did everything for us. I didn't see it. Now I do. I'm sorry." I stared at those two sentences until the light shifted on the wall. I didn't smile, didn't cry, just folded the letter once, placed it in the drawer with the spare keys and the flashlight batteries, and closed it. That was all it was ever going to be. A folded apology. Late, fragile, unable to carry the weight of what it had cost. I made eggs that morning, toasted bread. No garlic. Ate alone. The silence didn't ache like it used to. It was just there. A companion that asked nothing from me. Jenny didn't come by again. She texted once, "Can we meet?" But I left it unread. The part of me that had once begged for her recognition, that had waited by the stove with full plates and half-spoken hopes, was dead. Killed not by one moment, but by 1,000. Death by neglect. By omission. They say grief is a river. For me it was a slow flood. Every ignored kindness. Every swallowed insult. Every thankless holiday a drop in the dam. When it finally burst, I didn't drown. I stepped out. The next few weeks passed in strange quiet. The city pulsed, but it didn't touch me. I walked in it like smoke. In crowds, I wasn't seen. In stores, I was just another man paying in cash, holding doors for strangers, nodding once and disappearing. No one asked me to explain myself. No one expected me to be anything. And for the first time in over a decade, I belonged to no one. That's when it hit me. This wasn't exile. This was escape. I had built their life. I had paid for it, repaired it, held it up with a carpenter's patience and a priest's silence. But I had never lived my own. I had been the background, blurred, quiet, supportive, necessary but unseen. Now I was a wall, cold, clean, unbending, unbreakable. One afternoon, weeks after the letter, I took a drive to the neighborhood we used to live in. Not to see them, just to see if the house still stood. It did. The windows were dark. Jenny's car was gone. A for sale sign stood in the yard, tilted, paint peeling. The grass hadn't been cut. The hedges I used to trim every Saturday had overgrown the walkway. The front porch sagged. It looked exactly like what it was. A house without a foundation. I parked across the street and watched. No one came out. A boy passed on a bike. Didn't glance my way. I wondered if Justin was still in town. If Chuck had stepped in, tried to salvage what I'd left behind. I doubted it. A man who forgets birthdays doesn't remember responsibilities. I didn't linger. Drove past the gas station, the dry cleaner, the diner Jenny used to love. All of it unchanged. All of it irrelevant. The next day I went back to work. Not for them. For me. I took a job consulting on small-scale logistics. Remote. Quiet. Clean. The first paycheck wasn't much. But it was mine. No shared account. No whispered thanks from across the dinner table. Just numbers earned honestly, untouched by anyone else's need. That night I slept better than I had in years. Until I didn't. Because grief doesn't end. It returns. In odd hours. In subtle shapes. For me, it came on a Thursday. Rain against the window. The kind of gray that seeps into your skin. I was washing dishes when I saw the envelope. Slipped under the door. No stamp. Hand-delivered. I picked it up. No name. No address. Just one sentence scrawled in the center. You were right. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew who it was from. Justin. It wasn't pride that kept me from responding. It was clarity. I had nothing left to give him. No more corrections. No more funding. No more second chances disguised as fatherhood. He had burned the bridge. Now he could learn to swim. I placed the envelope beside the first letter. Both untouched. Both irrelevant. Because that's what they were now. Echoes. One evening, Jenny's sister called. She used to be the only one in that family who saw me. It's a mess, she said. Jenny's a wreck. Justin's thinking about leaving town. The business is gone. Chuck's vanished again. Everyone's asking what happened. I said nothing. She pressed. Do you want me to tell them anything? I sipped my coffee. Tell them I was the scaffolding, I said. And they built without nails. She exhaled. You don't want to see them? No, I said. They've already seen me. They just didn't look. We hung up. I went back to my chair, the quiet, the dark. I no longer needed their eyes on me. I no longer needed to explain the weight I had carried. I knew the truth, and that was enough. I had been the background, the quiet man, the man who paid, who stayed, who swallowed his pride for the illusion of peace. But illusions crumble, and when they do, only the builder is left standing. Jenny never called again. Justin never knocked. The house was eventually sold. The last tie cut. Months passed. I began to live. Slowly. I read again. Took walks. Cooked for myself. Not out of obligation, but choice. Sometimes I looked at the drawer. At the letters. Thought about burning them. But I didn't. Not out of sentiment. Out of precision. They were proof. Not that I had been wronged. But that I had existed. That I had tried. That I had carried something heavy. And when I put it down, no one noticed until the floor collapsed. And even then, only because they fell through it. I tell you this not for sympathy. Not for rage. I tell you this because I know you're out there. You, the man sitting at the edge of the table, carving chicken while they laugh without you. You, the one fixing pipes, paying tuition, making space for children who only speak to you when something breaks. You think if you're patient enough, kind enough, generous enough, they'll see you. But what if they don't? What if they never will? What if you're not waiting for their love, but for permission to stop begging for it? I waited too long. I gave too much. And when I left, the silence didn't chase me. It replaced me. So here's the final truth. Sometimes leaving is the most honest thing you can do. Sometimes the only thing that proves you mattered is what happens after you disappear. And sometimes being forgotten is the freedom you never knew you needed. So I ask you, if you were me sitting at that table, if your name had been erased from the contracts, the stories, the family, would you have stayed? Would you have kept setting the table? Would you have waited for love that never arrived? Or would you have done what I did, stepped away, and finally become the wall instead of the wallpaper? Tell me, was I wrong? Or was I just late?